My name is Fidel Mwaki. I'm an advocate specializing in corporate and commercial law. Today I'll be discussing prenuptial agreements.
What are prenuptial agreements and are they common in Kenya?
Well, prenuptial agreements, or prenups as we like to call them, are written agreements that are entered into by parties before they are married. So essentially these agreements provide for how property that the couple acquire either before their marriage or during their marriage, and how that property will be dealt with, especially in relation to the property rights of each of the parties to the marriage. I would say that they are not common in Kenya, but it's not a new concept. What we have seen over a generation is that many people are not getting married as early as, say, our parents used to. They are foregoing marriage to perhaps focus on their education, pursue higher degrees, also on their career. They're also looking to create wealth and invest. As well, they are looking at business growth. Yeah? So maybe they set up a business and they want to see it grow. So a lot of these issues are now impacting decision making by young people as to whether they actually get married now or later in the future. There are also, prenups have actually become common outside of Kenya. We've seen a lot of prenups coming into play in places like the US. We've all heard the stories of celebrities and their prenups and how, when they divorce, suddenly, the prenup is now comes to the fore during the divorce proceedings. So prenups can actually be a very good way in which parties can actually plan their affairs in the future. In Kenya, the prenups have actually come in recently. They've been allowed under one of our laws called the Matrimonial Property Act, which allows parties to actually record or set out details of how their property, whether acquired before marriage or during the marriage, will be treated.
What are some concerns that a prenup can address?
So, and we discuss prenups as being contracts that are entered into before marriage. So you who is contemplating a marriage, some of the concerns you may be concerned about are, for example, what happens to my property once we are married, and if I pass away during the marriage, where will that property go? Will it go to my successors? Will it go to my friends? So the prenup agreement can actually set out in detail. For example, I bring in a property into a marriage and I decide that that property in the prenup agreement will go to my friend who has been a very close friend of mine, rather than go through a succession whereby it has to go to my children or whoever. So number one, it allows you to reduce that fear that your property may not go to whoever you wish in case you pass away. Another issue with prenups is the aspect of property being used or misused by another spouse. So for example, we've seen in many cases whereby one spouse may take a loan from a bank. Yeah? They take a loan from a bank and then they use that same property of the other spouse as a security. Yeah? So what happens is, for example, the other spouse who has taken the loan may not fulfill the obligations under the loan, which creates conflict because now the property of the other spouse is at risk. Alternatively, they may develop personal problems and are not able to stay together, so they may separate. And if they separate, what happens to that property? Because it is still secured, or is still securing a loan for the other party. So that is another concern, and that can be captured in the prenup, whereby one party can say, look, this property is mine and it cannot be used for any loan obligation that you may have. Another issue which is quite contentious, and we have seen it in the courts, is the issue of contribution. So the parties get into a marriage initially and everyone's happy. Then they decide to buy a property. When they buy that property, you may find that one of the spouses is the one who contributes financially to the acquisition of that property. The other spouse doesn't contribute financially. But once they move in, say it's a house, they move into that apartment, the other spouse then has a greater contribution in terms of maintaining that property. So the prenup can actually capture the rights and obligations of each party. So for example, if they buy that property, her contribution in terms of maintaining the property, looking after it when he's not around or when he goes to work, that can also be captured in the prenup as an important factor in the event that they separate and the property has to be sold off to so that each party gets some benefit out of it. So there is a way of quantifying that contribution under the prenup. Finally, I would say that prenups should not be seen in a negative way. They should not be seen as though the parties are planning for divorce, which is what many people say. What they should be seen as is an astute way to manage and plan your estate. So it's a form of estate management that you do before you enter into the marriage, and it can actually help in terms of how your property is dealt with during the marriage and after the marriage.